Okay, confirm live.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 1 o'clock, so we'll make a start. This is a Cabinet meeting of Shropshire Council on Monday, the 29th of March. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public are able to hear and view the papers, and the papers will be displayed during the broadcast of the meeting. This meeting is being held using remote technology, and should any Cabinet members experience technical difficulties during the meeting, they should immediately contact the telephone number previously provided. Councillors are requested to mute their microphones unless asked to speak. The chat function may be used to indicate the desire to speak. As leader, I will interpret the Council's existing standing orders in light of the requirements of remote participation, with advice from the monitoring officer prior to making a ruling. At the start of the meeting, I will ask members of the Cabinet to confirm their presence and any interests. I will ask everyone that speaks during the meeting, including members of Cabinet, group leaders or officers, to introduce themselves before they speak. So item 1 on the agenda is apologies. I think we've got a pretty full house, Amanda. Is there anybody that have sent apologies?
I haven't received any apologies, Leader.
Okay, thank you. So item 2 is the roll call, and if people can just say if they've any pecuniary interests. We'll start with Gwilym Butler.
In attendance, Leader, no pecuniary interests.
Okay, Lee Chapman.
Yes, I'm here, Leader, and no pecuniary interests. Thank you.
Steve Charmley.
Yeah, here as well, Leader, no pecuniary interest.
Dean Carroll.
Present, Leader, no pecuniary interests.
Steve Davenport.
Yes, here, Leader, and no pecuniary interests.
Robert Macy.
Present and no pecuniary interests.
David Minery.
Present, Leader, nothing to declare.
Leslie Picton.
Present, Leader, no pecuniary interests.
And Ed Potter.
Present and no pecuniary interests.
I suppose I ought to say I have no pecuniary interests as well. I never ask myself that question normally. Right, so others who should be present or may be present are the group leaders. Alan Mosley? No, I haven't seen or heard from Alan so far. So Pauline D?
Present, Leader, and no pecuniary interest.
And Roger Evans?
Present, no pecuniary interests.
We should have some other members who want to ask questions who have notified us. So Councillor Ed Bird.
Yes, I'm present. I have no pecuniary interests. Thank you.
Councillor David Turner.
I'm present, Leader, no pecuniary interests.
And Councillor David Vasmer.
Present and no pecuniary interests.
And the officers in attendance should be Mark Barrow, Andy Begley, Karen Bradshaw, Tanya Miles, James Walton, Tim Collard and Amanda Hollyoak as our committee officer today. Right, so moving on to item 3, there are 2 sets of minutes to approve. They're from the 8th of March and the 11th of March. They've been circulated and I'll propose that and ask the Deputy Leader, Councillor Steve Charmley, to second.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah, happy to do that.
Right, I'll give everybody a few seconds to indicate if they've anything to bring up, but if not, we'll agree the minutes as printed. Right, nobody's indicating differently, so the minutes are accepted. We now move to item 4, which are public questions. And the first question is from Paul Gill. I usually now move to Claire Porter to read the questions out, but Tim Collard.
I'm happy to. Yes, Leader.
Tim, you have got the job. So Tim, can you read question 1?
I will, Leader. First question is from Paul Gill, and I'm informed that a very similar question was also received from Susan Coleman. Question is this: many parish councils are meeting using Zoom or Teams, but it is unclear how legislation will control this in the future. Will the Cabinet support maintaining digital meetings in the future for town and parish councils?
Right, and I'll respond to this one. As I'm sure you all know, it is set in legislation whether meetings can take place virtually or have to take place in person. The emergency legislation in light of the pandemic allowed for virtual meetings for all principal and parish council to take place virtually until the 6th of May this year. Representations were made by many councils, including this one, to see if the possibility of virtual meetings continuing for a further period could be allowed. The government indicated on the 25th of March that it was not prepared to make the necessary changes to primary legislation due to pressure on the government's legislative programme and in light of the progress being made to tackle the virus. The government has, however, launched a call for evidence on the use of current arrangements and to gather views on the question of whether there should be permanent arrangements before any further decision are made, and the Council will be responding to that. We are also aware of a challenge that has been brought to by the Association of Democratic Service Officers and others in the High Court that may lead to a change of interpretation of the legislation, which could conceivably permit remote meetings to continue. But as matters stand currently, all councils will need to plan for face-to-face meetings from the 7th of May onwards. Thank you. We'll move to question 2 from Ian Burgess. Tim?
Yes, thank you. The question's this. How does Shropshire Council propose to implement the introduction of integrated care systems in line with the government and NHS proposals so as to remove divisions or disjointed services between all partner organisations such as GP practices, hospitals, etc.? And how will this improve the service delivery for both physical and mental health?
And I'm going to ask Councillor Dean Carroll, the portfolio holder for adult social care and health, to respond. Dean?
Thank you very much, Leader. Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Ian, for the question. Within the integrated care system, which is the ICS, Shropshire Council plays a pivotal role in leading both strategic planning and delivering programmes to reduce inequalities and to deliver integration. The local authority supports communities through business development, social care, arts, culture, leisure and infrastructure. Our strengths as an ICS will be demonstrated by working collaboratively to make the best use of all our resources, maximising our assets, both human and built, and by integrating services, more people of all ages will be able to access what they need to stay well close to home. The experience Shropshire Council has in partnership working, in commissioning and in delivering a broad range of quality services provides the bedrock for this work. The local authority has a long history of partnership working, and our ability to lead and support partners has been evident through our system's response to COVID. We have an opportunity to build on the good work of the vaccination and testing programmes, the work to support care homes, PPE, and the work we have done to engage and support communities through the Community Reassurance Team to improve population health as a whole. The Executive Director of Adult Services will lead the Place Partnership Board, the Shropshire Integrated Place Partnership, otherwise known as SHIP, with the first meeting taking place in April, which will act as the engine for integrated working in Shropshire. The board includes primary care health providers, social care, public health, the voluntary and community sector, Health Watch and service user representation. This board reports to the ICS board, currently in shadow form, and the Health and Wellbeing Board. The SHIP focuses on key prevention programmes that will drive forward integrated working, including social prescribing in its broadest sense, further developing our integrated programme with the voluntary and community sector, primary care and other partners, as well as supporting all community referral programmes, including green and creative health prescribing. Voluntary and community infrastructure, that is ensuring that we build on the legacy of the COVID response, whereby the goodwill and generous nature of our communities has been in abundance. Mental health provision, by developing preventative approaches, making access to support easy and in a range of methods, i.e. face-to-face, telephone, online, etc. avoiding escalation of crisis. Children, young people and families, by working collaboratively across the local authority and with health and voluntary sector colleagues to support parenting, early years development, emotional and mental health and access to work and study, and the rapid access to health and care services when they are needed. This work is underpinned by our developing Joint Strategic Needs Assessment, JSNF. A key element of this is understanding our population and its needs. COVID has also brought us closer to our communities through supporting the voluntary sector, through direct delivery of food and other support, through a single access point for people who needed help, through services checking in with service users, and through the community reassurance team, which has been working in communities to engage with people. Building on this, the local authority must work with partners to continue this dialogue so that we always understand the makeup of our communities, their needs, wants, and more importantly, to create a two-way communication channel. Shropshire Council has already made an impact by working with ICS leaders to recognise the role of the ICS at place level. The ICS has developed governance that focuses on place-based approaches to improve population health and have agreed key principles in order to reduce inequalities. That's the answer. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Dean. Right, we move to question 3, which is again from Ian Burgess, and I'm going to ask Tim Collard to read it out. Tim.
Thank you. The question is this: when is Abbey Foregate, particularly the stretch between Bell Lane and the column, going to be properly resurfaced, as it is a hazard in particular to cyclists and motorcyclists?
Right, thank you, Tim. I'm going to now ask Councillor Steve Davenport, portfolio holder of Highways and Transport, to respond. Steve?
Yeah, hello. Yes, good afternoon, actually. Steve Davenport here. Hello, Ian. Thank you for the question. The section of carriageway between Abbey Foregate and the Column roundabout and Bell Lane remains a priority for maintenance. It is inspected every month and safety defects will continue to be dealt with. Our design engineers, WSP, are looking at an appropriate treatment for this road, as indeed they are with all other roads within Shropshire post a very wet winter coming into spring and summer. Thank you very much.
Okay, right. Question 4 is from Susan Coleman, and again I'm going to ask Tim Collard to read it out. Tim.
Thank you. The question is this: will Shropshire Council ensure that all the cycleways along Longdon Road, Roman Road, Radbrook Road, Bank Farm Road and Red Deer Way used by pupils at Meal and Priory schools will be resurfaced and the lines repainted in time for the autumn term 2021?
Thank you. And it's back to Councillor Steve Davenport. Steve?
Yes, hello, Sue. It is the council's intention and my intention to produce a programme of works to clean and reline the existing 1,800 miles of promoted cycle routes in the county. This will be a key role for our new interim active travel manager who joins us in mid-April. There will be certainly plenty for her to do. We will produce our cycling and walking plan, thus the programme of works will come forward. However, at this stage, I can't provide or comment that the cycle path referred to addressed by September. The exception of Radbrook Road is identified for relining works by the target of 31st of July. I can, however, commit to providing a programme that will include resurfacing patching of services will be issued by early summer. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Right, we move on now to question 5, which is from Leslie Maguire. And again, I'm going to ask Tim Collard to read it out. Tim.
Thank you, Leader. The question is this: the skate park in Eastern Oswestry is situated on Shropshire Council land. In recent months, Councillor Price and myself have been inundated with calls about antisocial behaviour on the site. Is it possible to provide CCTV coverage for the area so that it can be monitored? There have also been calls to provide improved skate park facilities for the young people of Oswestry. Can I ask that our thriving partnership, Future Oswestry, use their joined up thinking to undertake a feasibility study of potential sites and costs in the form of a detailed options appraisal, which can then be considered.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Back to Councillor Steve Davenport. I'm not quite sure why you've got this one, Steve, but it seems to be within your remit. So
yeah,
Steve,
that's fine. Hello, Les. Thank you for the question. The issue can be raised at the Forward Oswestry Group meeting and considered as part of the wider project. I'm more than happy to raise and update this there, and I will then keep you informed as to where it goes. Thank you, Les.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Item 6 is from Louis Katz. Tim, can you read this question, please?
Yes, thank you, Leader. The question is this: can the Cabinet Council introduce a new funding grant scheme with the aim of creating jobs, either by supporting small business expansion or assisting startups?
Okay, thank you, Tim. I'm going to ask Councillor Steve Charmley, the Deputy Leader, to respond. Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Louis, for the question. Shropshire Council has received funding from central government under the Additional Restrictions Grant, with the purpose to work up and deliver a range of programmes across the coming financial year. Part of these funds have already seen the delivery of 2 rounds of our discretionary Additional Restrictions Grant. The fund has seen the payment of more than £5.7 million of grant funding to businesses not eligible to receive funds through the government's Local Restriction Support Grant, which is available for business rate payers in eligible premises mandated to close by the government. The additional programmes of activity that are currently being developed will include a range of business support initiatives as part of our economic recovery. There will be an element of focus given to some sectors particularly impacted, including the visitor economy sector and those offering businesses to consumer services, as well as support to new startup and early stage businesses, and those looking at diversification opportunities, which will include access to both business support initiatives and access to funding. This work will complement the range of existing funding and business support activity currently delivered by Shropshire Council through their Economic Growth Service and Marches Hub Shropshire.
Okay, right, thank you. We move on now to item 5, which is questions from members of the council. And the first question is from Councillor David Turner. David?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Councillor David Turner, Much Wenlock. I appreciate that my question to a certain extent overlaps with that of 2 members of the public earlier, but I'm interested in hearing the response and possibly having a supplementary question. Over the past 12 months, local government at every level has demonstrated remarkable resilience in serving its communities during the global pandemic. An early challenge was overcome in ensuring that elected members could meet in order that decisions could be made. The use of remote technology has meant that the overwhelming majority of elected members at every level have participated in the democratic process from home. With the rollout of the COVID vaccine, there is much optimism that normal meetings will take place in person this year. Nonetheless, I believe there's merit in maintaining the facility for remote participation under certain circumstances. For instance, there may be members who are still classed as vulnerable and who may be unwilling or unable to leave their home. And there are significant cost and time-saving advantages. For instance, there are meetings, formal or otherwise, that are normally quite brief and could be conducted perfectly satisfactorily online. I have attended remotely a monthly meeting as a Shropshire councillor over the past year. I've saved 12 hours travelling time for 12 hours of meeting, and if I'd travelled to them and claimed the mileage allowance, the council would have paid me £216. Multiply such savings over 74 members of this council alone, and over many other meetings, and it can be seen that there is a material advantage to the council taxpayer. Would the Cabinet consider making further representations to Whitehall for optional continuation of remote meetings for all levels of local government where appropriate and necessary? Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, David. And I'll respond, and I may come back later as well. As you will have picked up from the answer given to the earlier question from a member of the public, this council, along with many others, did make representations to see if virtual meetings could continue after the emergency legislation comes to an end on the 6th of May. As you will be aware, the government indicated on Thursday that it was not prepared to make the necessary changes to primary legislation in light of the progress being made to tackle the virus. In addition to the High Court action brought by the Association of Democratic Services Officers, which could conceivably permit remote meetings, though there are other potential options mentioned by the government to limit the number of meetings, and these will be actively considered. The government has also launched a call for evidence on the use of current arrangements and to gather views on the question of whether there should be permanent arrangements before further decisions are made, and the council will be responding to that. Now, David, you have the opportunity to come back, or if you would like to hold back a little bit, I am prepared to ask Willem Butler, who has been involved in this from the point of view of parish councils, to make some comments before you respond. But it's up to you. You can respond first or wait and listen to Willem first.
I think I'll respond first, if you don't mind, Leader. This is David Turner. I'll respond first, if you don't mind, because I've got some points which hopefully Gwilym will respond to, rather than do it the other way around.
Okay.
Thank you very much. It was interesting that both Mr. Gill and Mrs. Coleman were interested in this issue. I'm a firm believer in getting people round the table in committees as soon as is safe for all participants. And the interim arrangements for many town, but the interim arrangements for many town and parish councils are not tenable. Shropshire Council has the resource to overcome this at a cost, admittedly, but many local councils will find this a big challenge. Some of their usual meeting venues have not reopened. Some of the usual meeting venues will not be large enough to socially distance in any case, and in Much Wenlock have a particular issue there. Elections having taken place on the 6th of May, members of the public will be keen to see who their new representatives are and will want to see how they perform and ask questions. When there's a discussion going on within a parish council, as I know of, that providing two parish councillors put in apologies and ask the unitary councillor, the new unitary councillor maybe, not to turn up and don't allow members of the public to attend, you know that there's a big flaw in the government's proposals. Watching town and parish council meetings from home has awakened public interest in local democracy. The well-publicised but regrettable conduct by councillors in a Cheshire Parish Council meeting has attracted attention from young and old alike, and we need to attract young people to engage in local democracy. Will the Cabinet please therefore draw out these issues immediately in their representations to government? Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, David. Now I've got Gwilym Butler, who was requested to speak, and Roger Evans. And although it's sort of breaking from tradition a little bit, I am going to allow a short conversation to take place, because there won't be another opportunity before the election for the council in any format to respond. And I would like to respond to government on the call for evidence. So I'm going to ask Gwilym first. So Councillor Gwilym Butler first.
Thank you, Peter. In response to David's secondary question, I have to totally agree with him, and there is definitely issues there, but it is only hopefully, fingers crossed, it's only a short-term issue until the 21st of June, when things should hopefully get back to normal, should the data maintain the government's roadmap. Just by way of an update, I raised this matter with SALC, the Shropshire Association of Local Councils, back in December, because I think there's a much wider issue here of how councillors and the next generation of councillors will want to work and how they will communicate. Both they and NALC fully support continuing virtual meetings or hybrid meetings, where you may have some people in the room or you may have some people out of the room. The point of that as well is that there are other issues that we need to consider. For example, my ward is 35 miles from Shire Hall, so there's a 70-mile round trip. What is the impact of that on climate change? And also the inclusivity of the population to be able to become councillors. There are a lot of people who are unable to get out of home, or they are carers, or they are working or looking after children and can't become councillors to get to a meeting hall. But if they could have virtual meetings, as we've seen, there could be further engagement. I'm pleased to announce that even before this came back from government, we have agreed to undertake a scoping project, which Nigel Newman, our communications manager, is undertaking. And we put forward approximately 12 town and parish councils of all sizes and shapes to actually talk to them about how we could collaboratively work in the future and perhaps provide help with infrastructure to maintain some sort of hybrid or virtual meetings. It's my personal opinion that if an official decision is not being made and a vote is not being taken, that virtual meetings could still continue. And it is only on the occasion where votes and decisions are being made that we may have to maintain, but I will take that advice from the appropriate administration officer post-election. I hope that helps, David, and I fully support a strong presentation to government. My personal opinion is there should be various options open to local authorities, and it is up to them to change their constitution to how they want to work locally, because there shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all delivered from Westminster. Thank you.
OK, I'm going to ask Councillor Roger Evans next. Roger.
Thank you, Peter. Completely agree with everything that has been said, and I want to add my support. It is hard enough for Shropshire Council to, or it will be if this continues, to conduct its annual meeting after the election within the timescale. For parish and town councils, and parish councils especially, it will be even harder, where you have maybe 10, 12, 14 parish councillors in a room, members of the public there as well. The parish council will not know how many members of the public will want to attend. There is the legislation in place until June. So, and I understand about the court action that is being progressed, but I would hope that Shropshire Council agrees with the court action and is supportive in every way possible that it can do, and also make representations to government as part of their present consultation on how to take things forward. And I agree with Councillor Butler. Councils, whatever their level, should be able to decide how it is best to meet the needs of their community. Thank you, Peter.
OK. I know David would like to ask a question, but I'm going to go to Leslie Picton first, then I'll come back to you, David. Leslie.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I just think one point I would like to make in the many parish councils that I've attended since lockdown, the increased number of people from outside of the parish council, i.e. members of the public, has been really heartwarming, and I think it will be a real backward step if we lost the ability for parish councils to engage with more people. Very often these people come along to listen to the parish council who wouldn't necessarily have gone out on a winter's night, left the kids with next doors or mum-in-law or something, and go to the parish council, but they've been able to take part in the meeting via a virtual screen, and I think it would be an absolute tragedy if we stopped that in the future. Thank you.
OK, right, back to Councillor David Turner. David.
Yeah, thank you, Leader David Turner, and I appreciate your indulgence. Councillor Butler, quite rightly, said that when we get to a date in June, there'll be greater freedom. There's a very real and practical problem at the moment, and that is the new councillors will be declared on the 10th, declared in their own councils on the 10th of May, I think, which is the Monday, and under their standing orders, and I believe it's a legal requirement, the first meeting of the parish council, whether it be Shrewsbury or whether it be Onybury, has got to be held within 14 days of the following day. So they've got to be held by the 24th of May, and there is no freedom to have more than 6 people in a room until after that date. So what are we going to do? Thank you, Leader.
Right, now I have sort of indulged a little bit, but I'm hoping everybody will agree that I or the officers put together serious representations to the government about the need for change in their attitude. I think the answer will be hybrid meetings, but we do need to make sure the technology exists. But Shropshire Council can provide that for parish councils if necessary. So unless anybody indicates differently, I will ask officers to put together a formal response from this council, with quite a strong response, promoting the views of mainly the town and parish councils, but of course it affects us as a principal council as well. And I'll get that circulated, but we will send that off as soon as possible, because I think it's an important issue, and I wouldn't normally indulge in this sort of way forward, but I think it's generally agreed by everybody. So unless anybody's got anything contrary to say, that will happen. So I'll give you all a few seconds just to indicate if there's anybody unhappy with that approach. Right, that seems to be generally accepted. So a letter will be put together and sent to the government, representing the views that have just been expressed. Right, sorry, we're going to move on now to the second member question, which is from Councillor Ed Bird. Ed, are you available?
I am available. Thank you, Leader.
Right, I thought I couldn't see your initials on my screen, but I knew you were there somewhere. Right, Ed.
Yeah, it's Edward Bird from Shifnal South and Cosford. Thank you. Shifnal has recently been subject to a substantial amount of housing development. The local plan also outlines further expansion of the town, which is already struggling with traffic, schooling and the doctor's surgery. Shifnal is located within the green belt, which should only be used under exceptional circumstances. Could Cabinet confirm that any unmet need from the Black Country, some 1,500 houses, will not be allocated to Shifnal? Many thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Councillor Rob Macy, the portfolio holder for housing and strategic planning, to respond. Rob.
Thank you, Leader. Draft policy section 15.1, which covers Shifnal of the draft local plan, does not propose any greenbelt release in order to support the delivery of the town's proposed housing requirement up to 2038. For clarity, the draft plan proposes that once recent completions since 2016 and current commitments are taken into account, an additional 322 dwellings are required to satisfy the local housing requirement in the plan period through until 2038. The draft plan proposes a range of housing allocations with which to deliver this requirement alongside an appropriate windfall allowance. Councillor Bird talks about the Black Country unmet need. As part of the legal duty to cooperate, the council have proposed in principle to accept up to 1,500 dwellings to help support the delivery of an element of the Black Country's emerging unmet housing need. It should be noted that this scale of proposed need has been endorsed by the Association of Black Country Authorities in their recent response to the Regulation 19 consultation, and the council will be continuing duty to cooperate discussions through this. I suppose in answer to Ed's question, the cross-boundary unmet need is proposed to be incorporated into our overall housing requirement for the county, and therefore it is not proposed that any specific site or settlement is intended to incorporate these needs.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Do you want to come back, Ed?
I think it is a big concern, as you're well aware, because I've raised it a lot, quite often with regards to Junction 3 and Shifnal. The additional housing, as I've been going around the town today, there are a lot of new estates. I'm glad that the new estates and those numbers will be included, as part of the plan as well. And also it's reassuring that, I think residents were concerned that there might be a huge new estate of 1,500 houses that sort of plonked next to Shifnal, and that's not going to be the case, and that will be spread out throughout the county. So that's very reassuring. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Right, we'll move to question 3 from Councillor David Vasmer. David.
Thank you. Yes, people who are suffering from long COVID tell me that there appears to be no provision for them locally. One GP told a patient that they had no information, nor could they refer them for further consultation. In adult social care, what plans are Shropshire making to support people suffering from long COVID? And is the council working with the NHS locally to give people suffering from long COVID the support they need?
Right, thank you. I'm going to ask Councillor Dean Carroll, the portfolio holder for adult social care and health, to respond. Dean.
Thank you very much, Leader, and thank you, David, for the question. A new post-COVID syndrome, referred to as long COVID commonly, clinic for patients across Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin was launched on the 1st of December 2020. The clinic is for anyone experiencing lasting symptoms of COVID, some of which can be very debilitating. People with long COVID are those with signs and symptoms that develop during or following an infection consistent with COVID-19, which continues for more than 12 weeks and are explained by an and are not explained by an alternative diagnosis. The condition usually presents with clusters of symptoms, often overlapping, which may change over time and can affect any system within the body. Many people with long COVID can also experience generalized pain, fatigue, persisting high temperatures, and psychiatric problems. Post-COVID-19 syndrome may be considered before 12 weeks, with the possibility of an alternative underlying disease is being assessed. The clinic that opened in December is staffed by a multidisciplinary team comprising of the following: a specialist respiratory nurse, a specialist respiratory physiotherapist, a specialist neurological occupational therapist, a dietitian, a sports exercise medicine consultant, and input from the IAPT team. The IAPT team is the Improving Access to Psychological Therapies team. There is a clear pathway for people referred to and from the clinic to get support with other needs, such as eligible social care referrals to the clinic, which are currently made exclusively through a GP, as there are a number of clinical investigations that are required and a full medical history is necessary. For context, they have received 195 referrals since the clinic started on the 1st of December, and 71% of these were from Shropshire's GPs. The clinic is currently being run virtually through the Attend Anywhere system. This is a video consultation mechanism where they send an internet link to the patient where they can access via a smartphone, tablet or laptop. If people don't have internet access, they can arrange a telephone or face-to-face consultation. There are plans to expand the service to allow the provision of some face-to-face consultations also once restrictions ease and NHS funding streams are confirmed. Communications and updates have been shared regularly with primary care via the CCG and their regular communication forums. The CCG and their communications team are part of the system group that have been working to set the clinic up. Publicity on social media, on websites and other media will be rolled out further during the course of 2021. For all referrals, there is a single point of contact, which is shropcom.singlepointofreferral@nhs.net is the email address. Further information can be obtained by contacting Sam Townsend at Shropshire Community NHS Trust, and her email address is sam.townsend2@nhs.net.
Okay.
That's the initial response.
Thank you.
Right. Leader, can I just come back? Yep. I'd just like thank you, Councillor Carroll, for that very full reply. But there does appear to be a problem with promotion and publicity of this clinic, and I wondered whether there's any. You did say about publicising on social media, I think, during the course of that question answer. So I wonder whether there's any other proposals, and particularly to make sure that GPs are fully informed of this facility.
Dean, do you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you. As I said during the response, primary care are fully involved in this, and it was disseminated down through the CCG, which all GPs practices are members of. However, we'll take that back. I mean, it's important to point out at this stage that it is the health service that is delivering the clinics. And so we will take that back and we will feed back to the CCG and to Shropcom, the Community Health Trust. But it is a new service, so teething problems are to be expected, but all GPs should be aware through CCG.
Okay, thank you. And we're going to move on. Item 6 is scrutiny items, but there are no scrutiny items. So we move to item 7, which is Rectory, Wood and Field Local Nature Reserve designation. And I'm going to invite Councillor Leslie Picton to introduce the item. Leslie.
Thank you very much, Leader. In October of last year, we brought a report before Cabinet to designate open spaces in Nestcliff, Lannamunnock, Poles Coppice and Lith Hill as local nature reserves. We said at the time that we would be looking to designate further sites, and earlier on this month, actually, we brought the Clive at Nestcliff for designation. This report brings forward Rectory, Wood and Field, which lies between Church Stretton and the Longmynd. The site gets its name from being formerly part of the grounds of the old rectory, and actually really interesting, this one, because the grounds were laid out in the late 18th century and have associations with Lancelot, or Capability Brown, as he's better known. The well-preserved remains of this landscape comprise woodland walks, a stream and an artificial pool, and sites of buildings which actually include a pumping house, a summer house and an ice house. It provides important recreational open space, and the site has full public access by foot, and there is a good network of paths. It also forms an important gateway to the Longmynd for both the local community and tourists, providing a variety of short walks and access to the hills beyond. Rectory, Wood and Field are not owned by Shropshire Council, but are owned by Church Stretton Town Council. And in 2019, Church Stretton Town Council agreed to pursue local nature reserve status for this well-loved green space. Shropshire Council has the power under the 1949 National Parks and Access to the Countryside Act 1949 to dedicate land as a local nature reserve, and this report delegates this power to Church Stretton Town Council, who in turn will be required to formally accept the delegation. I move the report and the recommendation that the council delegates power to Church Stretton Town Council to enable the designation of Rectory, Wood and Field as a local nature reserve. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you very much, Leslie. I'm going to ask Councillor Lee Chapman to second, and this is probably Lee's last meeting of Cabinet. So, Lee.
Yes, thank you, Peter. Yes, thank you to Leslie, and particular thanks to her colleagues, Edward Andrews, who supported this work, and the support of staff and volunteers, the National Trust, who support the work of the Town Council, guided ably by the volunteers of the Rectory, Wood and Field Interest Group. As Leslie says, this is a much loved public open space for quiet recreation, immediately accessible from the centre of the town, and also providing access out onto the Longmynd and the Shropshire Hills. So I'm very happy to second this report, and as a town councillor in Church Stretton, at least for the next meeting, I'll be part of the decision to formally take those powers and use them to designate it. And as Peter said, as this is my last cabinet meeting, I'm retiring this May. I'd just like to thank colleagues on Shropshire Council and the residents of Church Stretton and Craven Arms for all their support over the last 8.5 years, and wish my colleagues all the best for the forthcoming election. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee, and best wishes for the future. I think you're going to have an interesting time. For people should know that Lee is proposing to move to the Pyrenees for parts of the year to cycle up and down mountains, and good luck to him with that. Right, back to the agenda. Nobody seems to be indicating they wish to speak on this item, so I'll go back to Leslie and then we'll move to a decision. Leslie, any further comments?
No, nothing further from me. Thank you, Leader.
Right. Well, again, the recommendations are in the report, so unless anybody indicates differently, I'll give you a few seconds, but we'll agree the recommendations. No, there doesn't appear to be any comments, so those recommendations are agreed. So we'll move to item 8, which is Oswestry High Streets Action Zone Update Report. And I'm going to invite the Deputy Leader, Councillor Steve Charmley, to present the report. Steve.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, a really positive report. I'm sure colleagues will be aware that Oswestry, through the Future Oswestry Group, has been successful in being awarded Heritage Action Zone status, which comes with a funding attached to it of 1.25 million, which includes a contribution from the Oswestry Town Council. It's obviously important that we put in the governance around this to make sure that everything runs smoothly once we start dishing out grants, etc. So recommendations 1, 2 and 3 set out that structure, and just bringing it to Cabinet to formalise those governance structures. I believe it's also been to the bid board and Oswestry Town Council, who are obviously partners in Future Oswestry, but I'm happy to move the paper with the recommendations as set out in 1, 2 and 3.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Charmley. We move to Rob Macy, who I'm going to ask to second the report. Rob?
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, happy to second the report. I think it's a real bonus that we managed to secure this money and get designated, and I think there's a real appetite in the town from businesses and from others to really make the most of it and improve, whether it's shop fronts, the usage of those and the other things highlighted in the report. It is a real good news story for the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, Oswestry is going to be one of the almost boom towns in Shropshire by the time we get Mile End into action and the town upgraded as much as possible. Any comments? I can't see anybody who wishes to comment. Pauline D wanted to speak, but I think that was on the last item, and we will.
No, it's this one.
Oh, right. Right, Pauline then. Yeah,
thank you. I'm the officers did put forward WEM, and I'm being political, not political, I'm being
parochial.
Parochial, that's the word. Yes, that parochial, sorry. And I do beg your pardon, as this is my last cabinet meeting. They did put forward WEM for the Oswestry High Street Heritage Action Zone, which unfortunately it wasn't successful. And this amazing amount of money, 1.25 million going into Oswestry, which, you know, great, I'm very pleased. There's been no investment in WEM since the 1990s, when I set up the Economic Development Committee for the town, and I managed to get 1.3 million in from Advantage West Midlands. And my concern is that it's been intimated on Facebook by prospective Conservative candidates that this is perhaps because you know, it might change, you know, if they have a Conservative candidate in, and I'm really quite upset about this because my colleague Chris Mellins and myself, we've worked really hard to try and bring funding in into WEM, and I say the last lot was in the 1990s from Advantage West Midlands. People don't want to have any housing development in the town because of the sparsity of the infrastructure. Everything that is in the town is supported by the WEM Town Council, and we have very little help from Shropshire Council. And I'm very, very concerned that this has been, you know, why it's been put down, because I think those of you that know myself and Chris know that we have worked very hard for our town and for WEM Rural and Wixel to try and bring in investment. But if people don't want to have any extra housing in the town, and quite rightly,
I'm going to stop you, Pauline. This isn't an election address time, and you know.
I'm not standing. I'm not standing.
No, but you are pushing the election, and
no,
we are.
No. What I want to ask is how and who set up the group that's leading in Oswestry. I did have it here, and I've moved my finger, and it's gone down. Who's the action group that's in Oswestry? That is the Future Oswestry Group. So I just wondered how that was set up. To see if, because I mean the civic society and that are trying very hard to you know, to get things moving, and I just wonder how that could be done. We could pass on the information to WEM Town Council, because they are the very, very active council.
Okay, right. I'm going to stop you there, and we will make sure the information is sent to WEM Town Council. But I'll ask Steve Charmley if he can sort of explain how this all came about. So, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Yeah, I mean, it was through the economic growth team. We brought together a partnership of Oswestry Bid and Oswestry, obviously, Town Council in Shropshire, which kind of replaced the old economic growth board in the town, which was kind of defunct and outdated. So we refreshed it, and yeah, the team involved have worked really hard in partnership to develop some of these funding options. Been very lucky to be successful, and hence we've got this paper today just to firm up the governance around it, so we can start spending the money, which is great. But we'll pass that on about WEM, definitely.
Okay. Right, thank you very much. I haven't got anybody else indicating they wish to speak. So we'll move to the decision, and there are recommendations. They're on page 16 of the paper report I've got in my hand, and we'll accept those unless anybody indicates that they want to challenge them. No, I think that there's general agreement with those, so those are accepted, and we will then move on. The next item is to exclude the press and public, which I'm sure we'll all agree. I'll move it. I'm going to ask Councillor Steve Chalmley to second it. Steve?
Yeah, seconded.
And I can assure the press and public they're not going to miss anything exciting, because all we're going to hopefully agree is the exempt minutes of the March meeting. So I think nobody's indicating that they don't want the press and public excluded. So the press and public will now be excluded, and I'll ask Amanda to press the button on the live streaming. Live